Hey everyone, I hope you had a nice weekend and were able to enjoy yourselves. Today we are going to get started with word parts. So this is actually going to look a little bit different than how we did it before. We were hoping that we would be able to have a Google slide that you would continue to add to and be able to turn in over and over, and just with the way that the Google integration is working, it doesn't look like that is going to be possible. So we are going to switch up just a little bit of how you take notes for your word parts. So what you're going to want to do is make a copy of the document that is linked here in your announcement. Now, if you need to pause the video and complete these steps and then come back and then pause and come back, you're welcome to do that. Just make sure that you're following along so that you don't get confused. So go ahead and click on that, and then you can make a copy of the document. Okay, and if you want to change, your title up here, you're welcome to. But the first thing that we want to do is move this into your English 1 folder. Now, as a reminder, you do that up here at the top. You have your title, you have a star, and then you have the move icon, and it looks like this. It's this little envelope or a folder. So go ahead and click on that. And then wherever it currently is stored, just go ahead and click this back arrow until you get all the way back and you can't go any further. And then you're going to want to click on My Drive and search for your English 1 folder. Hopefully you already have one, but if for some reason you don't have an English 1 folder, you can make a new one right here by clicking on New Folder, typing in English 1, clicking the blue check mark, and then clicking Move here. If you already have an English 1 folder, I'm just going to pretend like this folder is my English 1 folder, then you would just click on Move here, okay? So make sure that you move your chart into your own folder. That way, in a couple of weeks when we come back to this, you'll be able to find it and add to it. Now, what you're going to do is I'm going to put up the presentation, and you will copy and copy down the different word parts, their definitions, and then their sample words. So I'm going to use an example just from last week. Or a couple weeks ago. So we had auto, and that meant self, and then our sample words were autobiography, autocracy, and automaton. Okay, so that's what it'll look like. You'll just have your word part, your definition, and your sample words. Okay, and again, as we're going through this, feel free to stop and pause the video to copy things down as you need to. So we actually have 5 words for this week. Okay, our first one is a prefix, and it is hyper. And hyper means over. So anytime that you see a word that has hyper as the prefix, you can assume that it's going to mean over or an excessive amount. So hyperextend, right? That's when you overextend something. So if you've ever heard of someone like hyperextending their knee or something like that, they have overextended it. Hyperactive, this is a word that we use to describe usually a person, right? When they're just being really, really, really energetic and just too active. And a hyperdrive is like overdrive, right? So if you think about, I don't know, someone going into hyperdrive, you're thinking about them like speeding along, right? They're going over what's normal. So feel free to pause the video if you need to and copy these down into your notes table. The next one is another prefix, and there's actually several prefixes that all fall under this same category, so you'll want to make sure that you copy all of these down. In, ill, ear, im, and ig. And all of these mean not. And we group them together because it is a very similar prefix type, right? The I and then a consonant. So you'll see this in words like invariably, which was one of our vocab words from Most Dangerous Game, right? So if you think about something that varies, it means that it changes. So if you say invariably, you're saying that it is not changing. Illegible means that you cannot read it. Okay, so ill meaning not, legible meaning like able to read. Irregular meaning not regular. Impossible meaning not possible. And ignoble meaning not noble. Okay, so you can see how all of these different prefixes, they mean the same thing. They just depends on what the root word is that they are paired with, which one you use, whether it would be in, ill, ear, im, or ig. But if you see words that start with these, you can assume that it's going to mean not something, whatever the rest of the word means. So again, feel free to pause if you need to before moving on to the next one. Our next is a root word, and it's bene, and this means good. So some example words would be benediction, which is like a good word. Benevolent, right, which is like a good, like if you describe someone as being benevolent, they are good and caring and bestow good upon other people. Benefactor, this would be someone, typically you hear about this in terms of like finances, right? Like if someone is a benefactor, they are donating money, but so they are giving good, right? They are doing good through typically donation of money. But so if you see bene as a root word, you're typically going to know that it has something to do with goodness. Like think about the word benefit, beneficial, right? Those are good things. Pause if you need to. Our next is ped and pod. So again, just like we had with the ill, ear, im, etc., these can be used sort of interchangeably depending on the root, the rest of the root word that, or I'm sorry, with the I can't even talk, with the suffix that is associated with them or the prefix that is with them. So ped and pod both mean foot. So a podiatrist is a doctor who works on feet. Then if you think about the word pedestrian, right, that is someone who is walking on foot. Or if you think about pedal, that is something that you push with your foot. So ped and pod, you have probably seen them pretty frequently, even if you didn't realize it, and they mean foot. Lastly, we have able and ible, and this means able to. So we have example words like legible, understandable, tangible. That was one of your vocab words for Most Dangerous Game. So legible is able to be read, understandable, able to be understood, tangible, able to be felt or seen. So this suffix will go on the end of words, and it tells us that it means able to. Pause the video if you need to. Make sure that you have all of those copied down. We will be making a Quizlet with them next class period, but for today, all you have to do is copy down those words, definitions, and example words. So once you're finished with the notes over the word parts for this week, you are going to complete your journal for today. So if you go ahead and click on it, your journal prompt is, should Rainsford be punished for what he did to General Zaroff? Why or why not? Remember that your journals need to be at least 3 sentences with proper capitalization and punctuation to receive credit. This is an all or nothing grade, so you either get all 3 points or you don't get any points, depending on if you meet these minimum requirements or not. So please make sure that you are at least writing 3 sentences, at least capitalizing the first word in each sentence, and at least putting a period at the end of each sentence. Pause the video if you need to while you complete that, and then you can come back and we will keep going through today's announcement. Okay, so once you're done with your journal, we are going to go through the punctuating dialogue slideshow. So I will link the notes right here, so that will actually be a separate video for you to watch. So go ahead and pause this video, watch the video of the notes, and that will help you with your creative writing assignment, which is what we're going to go through right now. So For your creative writing assignment, you can pick any of these options. There's different prompts, and you just have to pick one that you're going to choose. It doesn't matter which one you do. They are all graded the same and have the same requirements. Okay, so you need to write about one of the following 5 prompts. Regardless of which prompt you choose, you need to write at least 1 to 2 pages, double space your work, include properly punctuated dialogue, figurative language, and maintain the tone and characterization included in the original story. And we'll talk a little bit more about those as we get to it. So the first option is a newspaper reporter. So you are imagining that you are a reporter for a newspaper or a magazine, kind of like a tabloid, like what you would see at the grocery store checkout lane. And you hear about, what happened between Rainsford and Zaroff, and you want to turn this into a flashy news story with a headline. So you want to start by writing the story in its headline. There's a graphic organizer here that can help you organize your thoughts if you need it. Remember that you want your story to have an attention-getting lead or opening statement, and you should follow sort of newspaper style, which is the majority of the information is in the first paragraph, second paragraph, and then as you continue going, you have less and less information. There's an article that I have linked there that has some basic rules, rules about writing a newspaper report. And then there's also some examples of what news articles look like. So if you want to choose that one, you can. Now remember that you do have to use dialogue and figurative language. So if you're going to choose the newspaper one, you want to maybe have, maybe you pretend that you interviewed Rainsford and you have some of his quotes of what he said about his experience or something like that. So make sure that you are still keeping in mind that you have to have dialogue and figurative language in there somewhere. The next option is an alternate ending. So this is where you're going to write a different ending for the story. So you could kind of choose where you want this to start. So what, for example, you could say, okay, what if he didn't jump into the sea? What would have happened instead? Or what if he didn't show up in Zaroff's bedroom? What would have happened instead? Or you could start it even earlier if you wanted to, like, what if, I don't know, what if the general had fallen in the pit or something? So knowing the characters, how else could the story have ended? That's what you kind of want to think of. So your story needs to be written in third person. It needs to include dialogue, figurative language, and it needs to maintain the tone and characterization of the original story. So keep in mind that, you want to make it plausible. So based on what's happened in the story so far, Rainsford and Zaroff are not just going to suddenly make up and be best friends. It's also the 1920s, so like Rainsford is not just going to whip out his iPhone and call Whitney to come and get him, right? Those things aren't possible given the time period. So make sure that you're consistent on that if that's the one that you choose. The next one is a journal entry, so it's reflecting on the past. So Rainsford would write, you're imagining that you're Rainsford writing a diary entry, reflecting on this event that happened. How does it affect him in the future? Of course, it's a journal entry, so it should be in first person. You should be writing as if you are Rainsford, and you can be creative in your diary design, but it does still need to meet the length requirement. In the past, I've had people do like several entries to meet the length requirement instead of just doing one big long one. Again, you do still need to have figurative language and you need to have dialogue. So think about how you could incorporate that into a journal or diary format. Another choice is stranded, which is you're imagining that you are Rainsford and you are writing a letter to help ask for help to get off the island. So your letter should include details from your experience that will be convincing enough for someone to come and rescue you, right? Like, why would they want to come to this island that is supposedly cursed? You need to convince them. Again, you want to make sure that you are still figuring out a way to include dialogue and to include figurative language and to meet the length requirement. Sequel, this one, you're just basically writing a sequel. So what happens next, right? Rainsford beats Zaroff, and then what happens? But again, remember, it has to be a realistic continuance of the story, so you can't just like have aliens all of a sudden come down out of the sky or something like that. You need to have it be something that's actually plausible. And again, there's a graphic organizer there for planning if you need it. And then finally, you're going to rewrite the story. You could rewrite the story from Zaroff's perspective. So you could, what I would recommend doing is picking a particular scene to rewrite, right? The whole story would be too long, but pick, one scene that you want to retell from Zaroff's perspective. So you could talk about your feelings about hunting, your boredom, how you trapped the humans on the island. Maybe you want to write about like how Zaroff got to the island and built his house, but that would be telling the story from Zaroff's perspective instead of, it's sort of told from like an omniscient perspective right now where we know about both characters. So those are your 5 options, and it really is up to you which one you want to pick. I think some of them are maybe a little bit easier to incorporate the requirements into, but they're all totally fine and pretty easy to meet these requirements. So if you scroll down, you'll see the rubric. So here's what you're graded on. Dialogue. So if you don't include any dialogue right away, you're getting a 0 out of 4. So make sure that you're including dialogue. Same with figurative language. Writing techniques, this is like your point of view and tone. So if you did a journal entry, is it told in first person? If you did a continuance of the story, is it still told in third person? And so on. Characterization, that's just making sure that you're consistent with the original story. Again, Rainsford and Zaroff are not going to just magically become friends. So don't include something like that in your story. And then grammar and usage and everything, all of those good things. So this is due on Monday. So this is the only day that we're giving in class to work on it though, okay? So if you get it done in class today, that's great. It's turned in and we're good to go. If you need a little bit more time, you can take more time, but it has to be outside of your normal class time because we have other stuff that we have to continue on and continue doing. So it's not actually due until Monday, so you do have the weekend if you need it, but not gonna give extra time in class to work on it, okay? So that is the creative writing assignment. One thing I did want to point out really quickly in the announcement for today, if I can get it to load, is that I have linked your article of the week at the bottom. So remember that is due by Friday, and I have a separate video for article of the week, it will be linked right here, and it has a video on it that goes over the instructions and gives you some sentence starters that you can work with. Okay, if you have any questions, you can feel free to call into the Zoom question and answer times or send me an email or a message on Canvas, and I will talk to you all next time.